Hello and welcome to Soul Symbols. My name is Shelley. I'm a writer, an astrologer, and a card reader, and I'd like to welcome you to my channel. Today is Tuesday, and it is How to Tarot Tuesday. And what it is every Tuesday I pull a card sequentially from the 78 card arcana of starting with the majors and then going into the minors of the tarot. And what it is each week I pull the card in question from 3 different tarot decks. I choose the images that I think best describe the card that we're discussing. Then we go through and do a brief kind of analysis of the imagery and the meaning of the card. And then after we do the analysis, I go ahead and I pull a reading with the deck that you choose that just says how that card is manifesting in your life. If you ever want to jump straight to your reading, the timestamps are listed in the description box below. And this week we are still in the Major Arcana, and we are on card number 16, which is the Tower. And what's interesting is we've talked before. We already did. There's kind of 3 really scary cards in the Major Arcana. And what it is the Major Arcana, and again, the tarot is a storytelling game. And the Major Arcana is the major life events. It's the very deep psychological things that occur to you, in your life. And it's the depiction of that. Now, there are 3 cards that are kind of what I refer to as the trifecta. It's the heavy hitter cards that usually invoke a lot of fear. And we did the How to Tarot on Death, which is kind of the #1 feared card. Then last week we did the Devil, and this week we're going to talk about the 3rd most feared card, and that is the Tower. And what it is with the How to Tarot, the first deck will always be the traditional Rider-Waite-Smith, which is the cornerstone deck of tarot. And the other 2 decks that I went with for this card was with the Tarot of Jane Austen, and then I went with the Slow Tarot by Lacey Bryant. And again, the names and authors of the decks are listed in the description box below. But we'll go ahead and get started to talk about the Tower. The Tower, again, is that 3rd most powerful card, and what it is that I think what makes these 3 cards, the top 3 scariest cards, Death, the Devil, and the Tower, I think the common denominator of fear is change, or feeling powerless, feeling like something's going to happen to you against your will. It's statistically proven that people dislike change, even if it's positive. So a lot of these images, a lot of these cards kind of represent change. It represents something that can be, sudden and what is perceived as being against your will. And the Tower definitely plays into that. The traditional image of the Tower is a very, kind of an obelisk kind of shaped building. And what you see is a completely dark black sky with angry clouds, and then you see a lightning bolt hitting. What's interesting is you see what looks like a king's crown being knocked off the top of the building, and then there are flames. And then you see a very disturbing image of somebody with what also looks like a crown, falling into what looks like, kind of a jagged base. It looks like you're just falling to doom. So the Tower definitely does. It invokes a lot of fear for that reason. It looks like something sudden and catastrophic happening, which does play into its meaning, but for different reasons. Now, the first and foremost, the biggest meaning of the Tower is sudden change. And just like we said, it's kind of like a disruption. It's a shock. It's something that you didn't anticipate. And just like you see with lightning, lightning is, it's a very Uranus kind of influence. It's like coming out, the shock out of the blue. But you think about it, lightning is a result of changing climate. Sudden changing climate, when a storm rolls in, when high pressure meets low pressure, right? It's just kind of like the perfect storm. That's when lightning gets created. So it's definitely, when it comes to it, it's being surprised And it's about kind of crisis. It's about, again, you know, two forces coming together and creating kind of a stirrup. Now, a lot of times it means, it definitely does mean major transformation, just like death, just like the devil. It kind of represents coming to a crisis point, right? You know, the biggest interpretation of the tower, the thing that you want to remember about the tower is that buildings are human-made, right? And buildings are made of organic materials. You know, as advanced as we are as human beings, you know, we have yet to create something that does not deteriorate under the constant repetition of the elements and time, right? So, but the thing about any building is that it is built on land, right? It is built on a foundation. And the cornerstones of that foundation determine how strong it is. And that always comes up when we talk about the towers, because what you have is you have a situation or you have something occurring that's going to test your foundation in life. And that foundation can be emotional. That foundation can be a relationship. That foundation can be an actual house. It can be, you know, your finances. It can be a job. But basically what it means is it's kind of like having your, what you thought was steady and strong shaken up, right? And it's a test, right? It's something, and I think what also makes the tower so scary is that, again, just like we talked about being afraid of things happening to you, it's kind of an external force, right? It's a very strong, you know, demolishing external force that you did not see coming, right? So that's what it's kind of saying. It's like when you see the tower, it's like, okay, is your foundation strong enough? If something came through to test this, or if you are being tested, are you strong enough? Now, in the same vein, it talks a lot about releasing. It's kind of like, again, just like lightning appears when it's, you know, when the elements collide, when you have low pressure and high pressure, you get a storm, right? So it can mean having an emotional outburst. It can mean, you know, erupting, like with anger, or, you know, having some kind of blow up with somebody. It can also mean that you are kind of crashing through your own ego defenses. Because the other thing about lightning is that it can also be an epiphany. It can be, you know, your structure being changed, and that structure can be the way that you think about things, right? It can be, it's a breakdown. It's breaking you down to your foundation, and, you know, that can be, you know, your belief system. It can be, you know, your thoughts about a situation. And again, the surrounding cards always help clarify, but it is definitely kind of like the crumbling of something because of that lightning bolt. And that lightning bolt you would determine by the rest of the read or what's going on in your life. Okay, you know, what's the lightning bolt, right? Now, one thing from the astrological side of things, to put the astrologer hat on, is that the sign of Capricorn comes before the sign of Aquarius. And the sign of Capricorn is ruled by Saturn, and it is very much that test. It's a testing time. Capricorn is ruled by Saturn, and actually we've had a really long Saturn transit right now, and Pluto is also in Capricorn. But what it does is it slows everything down and it tests it for validity. And Saturn is what they call the taskmaster planet. Where it is in your own chart, because at the time you were born, Saturn was in a sign, and you know that the sign that your Saturn was placed in at the time of your birth and the way that it interacts with the other planets in your chart determines on how you live your life. And Saturn is definitely your cornerstone. It's your foundation. It is that stodgy planet of, this is how I do things in life. This is how I build and get and achieve things. So the other thing is, if you have a Saturn transit come in, and with Capricorn being in its own, Saturn being in Capricorn of its own sign right now, I always think about that as anytime you're having a Saturn transit, like where Saturn is now, if it's affecting your planets, if it's making contact to you, what it does is, I always call those transits the midlife crisis. And what it is it's because, it comes through and it says, okay, how strong is that you've come this far. You got the job that you have the car that you have the relationships that you have the roof over your head that you have. Is that where you wanted to be? And usually it stems back to the last time Saturn was in the same place, which is usually about 20 years prior. And if you're that old. But, what you do is it says, okay, and just like we all go through life and we say, oh, okay, this job is just part-time, but I won't do it forever. And then 10 years later, you're further up, the authority chain, but you're still in the same profession. It kind of comes out of the blue and it shakes you up, right? It says, okay, is this where, you've gone so far down this path, is this where you want to be? And then the moment that Capricorn steps over into Aquarius is ruled by lightning. It is the Uranian planet. And what it does is it comes back and it says, okay, yeah, you built that, while you were going through your Saturn transit, you built this house. Is that what you wanted, right? It almost comes in and shocks you like that. So I definitely see the Tower as being kind of traditionally, it's in the traditional tarot books will tell you that it's Mars ruled, but I really see it as Uranus ruled. I really do. I see it as Aquarius, just because that rules lightning, that rules epiphanies, it rules sudden change. And I'll tell you, Uranus is the planet of sudden change. It comes in and what it does is it makes you question. Again, it's that midlife crisis. Okay, is this what you wanted? Is that house what you wanted? And what the Tower does is it tests that. It says, okay, this is going to come in and happen. This storm happened. And you can almost think about it when you look at the news footage from really bad storms, that come in and destroy everything. And I know that's such a sad reference. But when you look at the aftermath, and you look at the cleanup of it, because that's another concept, is it's saying, experiencing a crash and then seeing the after effect, having the aftermath. And that's actually more of the Tower in reverse, but we'll get there in a minute. But it is just kind of saying, this was what you built strong enough to withstand the elements of what comes through in life. So if you're looking at that from a relationship perspective, you can say, is our relationship strong enough to weather the near breaks? There was a really great story by a pastor, I think a reverend, who said, I've been married to the same woman, but I've been married to the same woman for 40 years. And he goes, but I haven't had one marriage with her, I've had 8. And he goes, and the reason that I say that I have 8 isn't because I got divorced and remarried, is that I had 8 points where we nearly didn't make it. We had 8 breaks. We had 8 times where that lightning bolt came in and tested the fortitude of our marriage. And the same thing can happen with a house. Maybe this was a real storm that came in and damaged your property, and it's saying, okay, this is what happened to your property. Maybe it's testing the fortitude of a job. Maybe the company that you work for is going through changes, and it's scaring you. Maybe you're facing unemployment or some other restructuring of the company, and you're afraid how it's going to go. Now, the other thing is, it is definitely, for all of its scariness, it is enlightening it's enlightening you, because even though it is terrifying, even though it is breaking down, it's saying, you know, what's going to crumble is going to crumble, right? Because the other thing about the Tower is that in the same vein, like with relationships, if your relationship is built on the right foundation, it will survive the blast. It'll be damaged, but the foundation will still be there for you to build upon, right? But if your relationship, or, you know, if your employment, or, you know, your ownership of a company, whatever it is, if it is not meant to last, then the Tower is telling you to let it crumble. The Tower is telling you that you might need to let it fall away so something else can be reborn. And just for the notation is that after this, after the Tower and Tarot, the next card that we'll be talking about next week is going to be the Star. So just bear that in mind. Now, the other thing, the second card that I went with was the Jane Austen Tarot. And what I love about this depiction of the Tower is that this is from the book Persuasion. And what it is Anne Elliot is in love with Frederick Wentworth, and he offered marriage to her, and, you know, in a weak moment, you know, she was encouraged to not accept his hand, and it caused a rift between them. Then 8 years pass, and he comes back, and he's a sea captain, and they get around each other again, and there's just a very stilted silence, right? You know, they still love each other, and what he does is Frederick starts kind of flirting with another younger woman who is, you know, part of Anne's extended family by marriage, not by blood. But, you know, I'll let you read the book to get the full details, but what happens is Frederick starts going down this path, and just like we said, it's like midlife crisis. You start going down a path, and if that path is not really meant what you're meant to do, or where you're meant to be, sometimes the universe will do a hard reset, right? And what happens is the woman that Frederick is kind of flirting with, she has an accident, right? She falls from a wall, and she ends up hurting herself really badly. And what happens is this incident, and I won't tell you the ending. You can watch the movie. All of them are great. Read the book. But it resets. It resets the course of what's meant to happen, and all of the couples that are meant to be together end up together because Louisa fell from the wall. And it was a sudden thing, it was a sudden shock, and you would think that it was just catastrophe, that there was no good that would come from that. But her falling off that wall completely shook everybody up, and it kind of broke apart any of the loose relationships where they could come back together and everybody paired up the way that they were supposed to in the first place. So I kind of think of it like a computer too. The Tower, and that's where I kind of view the Tower as a little bit of a good card. I know the traditional Rider-Waite kind of makes it look all gloom and doom, but it's a hard reset. It's a hard reset. It's that it is kind of like, again, it's like that midlife crisis thing. The other thing about the midlife crisis thing is that sometimes, Saturn forces you to go very, very slow, because it wants to know that what you're working towards is really what you want. You got to want it, right? It has to be 100% tried and true, what you need, what you need in your life. And, and sometimes when you've built up all that stuff and then you just try to make a clean slate that fast, it doesn't work that well, right? Because Saturn wants you to put a firm foundation under something, but Aquarius and Uranus will come in and wipe away anything that isn't firmly established. So it is it's a weird kind of parallel. it's a weird kind of parallel, and it's kind of like going through and saying, okay, what is secure, what is strong, what is meant to be? If it's not meant to be, there is going to be a hard reboot, and when that hard reboot comes up, it's only going to be the major software, it's only going to be the major hardware that survives, right? Everything else, you get that ugly blue screen that says your computer has kicked it, right? So sorry, I went off on a weird analogy there, but that's kind of the dynamic between these two. You know, if you've really securely established something, it will weather the storm of the tower. It will weather the storm of the really dramatic, you know, external waves that will come in and really lash and wear down and test you. But the nice thing about the tower is that if you did create a faulty foundation, if you did build up something that was fake or false or not strong enough, it wipes it out. And that's where a little bit the tower is like that blessing in disguise. If you've ever, one thing that I'll get into that in a minute. I'll wrap up on that. But the third card that we got, and again, just we're going right into it, we're flowing right into it. If something is built that's on a flimsy foundation, right? And with the slow tarot, I really love this because first off in the background you see like rain just pouring down. It looks like a storm, right? And then you see this kid, and you look at this and it's like, you know, first off, I kind of balk at the fact that, you know, black cats are always seen as an omen of bad luck. I think they're actually very good luck. But here it is kind of saying that, you know, like it's kind of hinting at that, you know, with the storm outside, that it might be, you know, just bad luck. Something came through and knocked everything down. But you, just like dominoes, you know, playing cards, a house of cards, right? How much more of a flimsy foundation, right? But you think of how much work it was, you know, just like dominoes. It took a lot of work and effort to set up all those cards, and then just one you know, gust of wind, one kind of push, and the whole thing comes tumbling down, right? And it almost looks like, the other thing is you can and just like in the other meaning of it, we just said that it can be a blow up, right? It can be you purposely, you know, destroying it. You know, what if that tower was made by someone else and he was mad and he just came in and knocked it all down, you know? So, but again, you know, a show here on YouTube that I just recently got into. It's by a film producer that does documentaries. He has a series called Abandoned, and he goes through and he does the background on either abandoned projects like, you know, theme parks, or, you know, ideas for renovation projects that just never got off the ground. He also does footage of like projects that actually got created and then later got abandoned. And I always find that a little bit fascinating. But the reason I mention it is because if you are going through a hard tower transit, it's comforting to kind of watch those kind of shows, because it is almost the same premise. Something bad isn't trying to, just like we get so afraid. You see the tower and you're like, oh God, I'm a victim, you know? Why do I have to be the victim? Why does this have to come in and destroy my world? But when you watch these kind of shows and you see the timelines of like companies that have gone bankrupt, or you see documentaries about these beautiful complexes that later they just went out of business, right? And when you actually go over the marketing strategy, you see that when they first started, it was an excellent idea. It was a thriving economy. But then, you know, just like some of these businesses that have gone bankrupt, they might have started in the 70s when brick and mortar was great, right? And then been going strong and growing throughout the 80s. But then, you know, as the advent of computers and other things came up, you can start to see, oh gosh, you know, the outside, the elements are changing. The marketplace is changing. People are buying things online, you know? You don't need as many brick and mortar stores. And what it is just like you built your foundation, it's about being adaptable. If you don't adapt, you know, the marketplace the storm is going to come. The storm is going to come. And when it strikes you, you know, you might make it, you might not. But it just kind of gives, I felt like it just gave a wonderful perspective for that, because when you look at it, when you take yourself out of the Tower's shoes, like instead of saying, okay, this is how it happened to me, look at how it happened to someone else and think, okay, did they see that lightning bolt coming, right? How did they build their tower, right? How did they build their tower, and how did they not reinforce their tower to withstand the storm that they incurred? So it just kind of helps give perspective, right? It helps you understand, and maybe if you kind of put yourself in the same perspective and say, well, gosh, yeah, when the storm came for me, my foundation wasn't strong. But the other thing that it reminds you is you can look at it and say, okay, but what remains? What remains? Because that's the other thing, is that once the storm has passed, then you go into recovery mode, right? So that would be, the Tower in reverse. The storm has already come through, it's already hit, it's already caused flames and destruction. But the next step is, what you do is you see, it indicates that the shock is over, right? So Tower in reverse, you've already been hit, and it's almost like that moment the day after the storm when you're kind of still in shock, still, doing, evaluation of what's happened to you. Now, the other thing is, sometimes the Tower in reverse, if it was a relationship thing, maybe you lost a relationship because someone didn't feel like you gave them enough attention. Maybe that, happened in reverse. Maybe this is really a property that you're doing evaluation as to, storm damage, or, maybe there's some kind of something with the roof that you need to fix. Maybe it's something with your company, or this might be when you actually get the news that, something is happening with your employer and you're kind of seeing where things are going. Now, the other side of it is, the good thing about the Tower in reverse is normally it means the trauma is over, right? The change has already happened, or at least with the Tower in reverse, you know where you stand now, right? You know where to go from here. Now, the other, so that's the positive. Just like, when you're reading a card in reverse and it's like, okay, this energy is dissipating, right? This energy is finally leaving. So that would be, you're evaluating the damage and you're preparing to start anew on the foundation that you have left, right? Now, when the Tower is in reverse and it's showing kind of a concentrated negative, like if you can also read it as the Tower being magnified, it would be kind of you resisting change. It can be kind of a persistent disruption. It can be something that's just not easing up. The storm still hasn't passed and you just don't know how much more you can take. It can also mean kind of tyranny, like again, and this can sometimes be in a business context, if somebody knows that a company is failing, but yet they still siphon off money from it, or they try to use it to their advantage. That can be a Tower in reverse kind of scenario. It can be a failure to live up to expectations, like maybe you thought that your tower was strong enough, and then in the hindsight you're like, whoa, that was just not, and the epiphany of that, the knowledge of that. And the last kind of meaning would definitely just mean that it was freedom from something, liberation, but it came at a great cost. And that can actually be the Tower in upright, but usually that's the Tower in reverse. But yeah, guys, so you can see the Tower is a very complex card. It's a very powerful one. And you can see why it's in the top 3 of the most feared. But I do still think that it is positive. I do think that, again, and seeing it as the hard reset, once you come out the other side, it will test you, but it will show you where your cornerstones are, and it will allow you to build again. So now that we've gotten that, that is the description of the Tower. So let's go ahead and do our reading. We're going to start with the first deck, which is the Rider-Waite-Smith. And with it, what I'm going to do is I'm going to go ahead and pause, and I'm going to let you choose a deck. We've got 3 decks here. The first is the Rider-Waite-Smith, and the second is the Tarot of Jane Austen, and the third is the Slow Tarot by Lacey Bryant. And I'll go ahead and pause the video and let you choose a deck, and I'll see you in a minute. Okay, we're back. So let's go ahead and start with the Rider-Waite-Smith. What we're going to do is we're just going to do a very quick spread to say, how does the Tower manifest in your life right now? So Rider-Waite-Smith, how does the Tarot manifest in your life right now? Thank you. Thank you. That's a very clean spread. I like that. Oop. Okay, I spoke too soon. We'll go ahead and go with that real quick. All right, now I kind of just determine the cards. I try to determine whether or not this is just a current energy or if this has been kind of an ongoing energy. The vibe that I'm getting is, I'm definitely getting as if, I'm just going to take in the energies for a minute. I am getting a little bit of a relationship vibe from this, but it could just pertain to any type of endeavor that you are emotionally invested in. But I'm seeing cups. I'm seeing cups. And what it is that in the past, you got the 9 of Wands. And in the past, you had some kind of situation that really beat you up, right? You felt like you were just constantly fighting, and it's almost as if you had many battles in the past, right? And it does kind of feel like you're just kind of, you're ready to, you're not necessarily ready to give up, but you've had enough, right? This is the person who's had enough. It's kind of like that card of, I don't know how much more I can take, but they're not putting up with anything. You're very guarded. You're very guarded, and it's because you've been through a lot. So what it is I'm getting a feeling as if your Tower, this situation, and it really seems like with another person, has been crumbling for a very long time. Now what it is where you are presently is you're in the King of Cups energy, and the King of Cups you can be a woman watching this reading and exuding his energy, but it's a very mature energy. It's somebody who knows their emotions. They know what they want emotionally, right? And it's someone you can see, when you look at the bottom of his throne, he's got all this water all around him, and it does look like it's churning. Like, look, he's even got a fish jumping there, and he's got one foot. He's on solid ground. He understands his emotions, right? He knows what he wants emotionally. So I think what it was is that I think you've had relationships. You've had relationships or you've had experiences in the past that really tested you. And it was almost like a slow crumble, right? It just kind of beat you up and beat you up and beat you up, right? And you finally, you came to terms with, in present, you realized that was not, that whatever the situation was, it was not built on a firm foundation, right? It wasn't unfolding the way that it was supposed to. And instead, in the past, you felt very guarded about it. You were very defensive about it in the past. But the Tower, and the fact that it's right above your King of Cups, it's almost like it is, I am kind of reading it more in that epiphany kind of sense. I think you had, and again, with this emotional maturity, you've come to realize that whatever was happening with the 9 wasn't serving you. And you just kind of let it crumble. You're saying, okay, yeah, that's just, it's not a good foundation. Whatever that was, whether that was a relationship, whether that was, a behavior, it wasn't serving you, so you just kind of let it go. And there was some kind of blow up. There was some kind of fight or some kind of, and it looks like several fights. It really looks like several fights, but it kind of, it set fire to the Tower, and you finally just opened your mind, it opened your heart to what you needed to do to not let that happen to you again in the future, right? Now, in the future, or the way where this energy is going is, you know, these experiences, this shock, this breakdown is really going to stick with you moving forward. What it's going to be is that moving forward, you're going to kind of go into the energy of being a little bit more controlled about it. The King of Cups is a very emotionally mature guy, but the nice thing about the King of Cups is that he does enter into relationships. He just does it he does it with a lot of emotional intelligence, right? He knows what he wants, and he knows what he can invest. But it's almost as if all of these knocks that you've taken in the past, it's going to make you a little bit picky moving forward. Not in a bad way, but moving forward, you really are going to get into an Emperor energy, and the Emperor knows what he wants. The Emperor calls the shots, right? He says what goes, and everybody else, you know, I say jump, you jump is kind of the energy. Now, the only caution about that is that the Emperor is a great energy. The Emperor is a very empowering energy. But the one thing is that, you know, this could be a person, it can be a father figure that you kind of answer to or emulate, like someone that you look up to and want to be like. But I'm getting more of a vibe that, you know, as you go into the future, you're really just not, you're going to be very controlling about what you let in. It's almost like you're not going to allow that tower to happen to you again, but the way that you're responding to it is by becoming a little bit tougher. You're gonna continue to do your thing, and if anybody, you know, tries to approach you and not do things your way, you're just not even going to have it. You're just not going to have it, right? Now, that's a completely okay energy, because you know, the Emperor is not a bad character. He's not in the reverse. So, you know, he's a leader, right? He's the Emperor of Kings. He rules kings, which is a great, you know, energy to have. And the thing is, the Emperor does still have a counterpart. He has the Empress, right? So you can almost read it like, you know, you kind of went from a soldier to being a king to being an emperor, right? And that's not a bad progression, you know, that's learning, right? That's growing. And I think that's what you want. You want to, you almost, you know, you took your knocks, you became emotionally mature from it, and then you want to continue to grow and become that provider, that you know, that king who rules the roost. Now, the only caution with that, again, is that you don't want to be too controlling with that. The Emperor does have a counterpart. He has an Empress, right? But he's the man's man and she's the woman's woman, right? And it's almost like that's what you expect. You're not going to settle for anything less than your counterpart. You want someone who's going to be, you know, very nurturing and doesn't fight with you. But the only thing that I'll caution is that that's a little bit of a narrow-minded response. Don't get too my way or the highway with that, because people are people, right? And sometimes you fight with people for, I know it's always irritating, but sometimes those tests come along for a good reason. The other thing about the Tower is it does forge your personality. It is shocking, and it wears you down. But you don't have to be a complete hard ass in order to ensure that this doesn't happen to you again, because inevitably it always happens. The Tower cannot be controlled, but you can, you know, but you're gonna become strong enough where you will settle for nothing less than your counterpart, but you're gonna be pretty picky about it moving forward. Now, the other thing is, these three wanted to kind of come out, and I just kind of take it as a clarifier, but you got the Five of Cups, you got the Justice card, and you got the Moon. And now, you know, the Justice card being between the two, it's almost like there's some regrets in the past. There's some kind of regrets, there's some kind of guilt over, you know, again, and this is emotional. This is emotional. These failed cups, these turned over cups, is what contributed, you know, to you taking your knocks, and it's what got you to the point of being mature. But the problem is that there is a little bit of justice in this, right? You know, you're never completely innocent in the way that these things fall out, and you might have a lot of anxiety, a lot of emotional anxiety about that. You might, you know, you might feel kind of responsible, and it kind of weighs in your psyche. But, you know, again, I do see a progression. I do see that you are going towards being stronger with it. But the other thing is, I always think of this too, is that if there's videos that show that there are houses that are actually made of bamboo. And what's beautiful is, and it sounds like the strangest thing, but they're probably the strongest foundation you'll ever see, because they flex. They're flexible, right? And you've heard the old adage, you bend or you break. That's the other thing that kind of helps you weather the storm. You know, a King of Cups could probably weather a Tower event more than the Emperor could. The Emperor would know what to do, and he'd know how to direct people, but the Emperor is he's a tough character. He doesn't bend. The King of Cups knows when to bend. He knows how to pick his battles. So just bear that in mind. I think you're in a very good energy now. You're going towards a stronger energy in the future. But I would just say, you know, again, you know, just, you know, you probably feel a little bit judged, and you probably feel a little bit emotionally churned up by everything that happened in the past in this Tower moment. But try not to let that make you too hardened. That would be the only caution with that. But all right, guys, so that was deck number 1. Let's go ahead and do deck number 2. And you got one of my favorite cards. I really do love this Tower. And you got the Tarot of Jane Austen, and you got my double pearl. It's a natural stone that I got at the beach. But let's see, can we see? So how does the Tower manifest in your life? Oh, thank you. How does the Tower manifest in your life? Oh, wow, guys, you're getting a lot of aces. And how does the Tower manifest in your life? Well, guys, so I definitely see that, and again, this being Jane Austen, it takes a little bit more of a relationship vibe, and yeah, sometimes it's hard for me to discern, but no, I'm definitely feeling relationship with this one too. But the reason I say that is because you got the Ace of Coils in the past position, and that's the Ace of Swords. And the Ace of Swords is breakthrough. The Ace of Swords, and again, we talked about how the Tower can be an epiphany. You know, when the lightning bolt strikes, it's like it's breaking open your perception of everything that you thought before, right? So in the past, you had some kind of mental breakthrough. Maybe you were seeing a situation from a new angle. It could very well have been a relationship that maybe you just always looked at the relationship one way, and then all of a sudden you just kind of saw it for what it was, or saw it in a different way. But in the past, you had some kind of breakthrough that really kind of opened up your mind. It got you seeing the truth. Maybe some kind of truth also came out, but with this new truth, with these new facts, or this new way of thinking, it started you off on a completely new path. It started you off in something that was very beneficial for you. And in the middle, right under the Tower, you have the Ace of Wands, or the Ace of Candlesticks, which is Pride and Prejudice, and there's books underneath. But the Ace of Wands, or the Ace of Candlesticks, first off, I do take into consideration the imagery. The other thing is feathers. I also feel like I feel like whatever epiphany you had was very guided, almost probably by angels or by, if you believe in, spirit guides or ancestors. I think you were very protected. I think it was something that you were meant to go through, but also I take the imagery of the deck into consideration. You see that there's kind of churning water in the background, which kind of mean emotions, but you see how everybody is gathered around and so concerned for Louisa, right? She had a tribe of people around her. I think this breakthrough was meant to happen. Again, the tower, the lightning bolt is going to happen, right? The storm, there will always be a storm that tests your foundation. And so I think this is something that they knew that you had to go through, kind of like, just like when you go through life. And it opened up your mind to a lot of things, but I do think that you kind of have energies around you that really protect you as you were going through that change, because it was a very sudden change. Now, the current is that this new mental breakthrough or this new way of thinking or way of believing has really sparked this new kind of vitalness in you. Again, candles, I see candles as being spirit, as being, the light. I think that whatever happened, I think it turned you into someone who is very giving of yourself. I hear the song, This Little Light of Mine, I think you're a light for other people, but this experience or whatever you went through, this event, it really was kind of the catalyst to get you to start on a new path. How we talked about the tower kind of, if you think about it like a midlife crisis kind of, if you've been going down a certain path for so long and you're really not seeing the way, you're not going the direction that you need to go. Sometimes something sudden will happen to be a hard reset to kind of get you over on the path. And I think, I do believe that there are angels and people around you that if they see that you haven't yet discovered what you're supposed to discover, or you're still stuck in the same position, like again, this can be anything. This could be you stuck in a job and that you don't like, and your guides are like, okay, well, if you just go do this, if you start this hobby, you'll be able to change jobs, or if it was a relationship, maybe you've been thinking that this person is the only one for you, and then something comes along and kind of shocks you, and you realize, okay, maybe let me just try to be single or try to be on my own. But here, whatever it was, whatever mental breakthrough you had really sparked some kind of new way of being for you that was very positive, and it was putting you on the right path towards what would be your life goal and would make you very happy. Now, the reason that I'm feeling like this is a little bit more relationship-wise is because we've got teacups next, which is emotions, it's feeling. And we got the 6 of teacups and you got the 4 of teacups. And what it is that the 6 of cups is normally fond memories. It's usually kind of nostalgia. And underneath it, you got the 4 of Cups, which is it's a little bit of that lethargy card. It's kind of like not wanting what's offered to you. It's typically the 4 cups sitting in front of you, and then another cup being offered, and you just don't want any of it, right? So I am kind of getting a vibe like you have had a lot of positive new growth lately, but you still might be holding on to some kind of past relationship or some kind of nostalgia for something in the past that's really, you got the beginnings going, but it's almost like you're putting the air brakes on it because you don't want to continue to go forward. Either that, or you know what I'm getting is that, you know how everyone has kind of different areas in their life? You got the education area, you got the work area, you got the physical area. I think you got the mental and spirit. I think you got the mental down. I think you got the spiritual and the physical going, but the heart area or the relationship area, you are still clinging to the past with. And I think you've had tower moments, right? You've had tower moments, and those tower moments have reset your brain. It's reset your spirit and your sense of intention, but it hasn't reset your heart yet. But what it's doing is, and these two wanted to come out too, and it's kind of like a clarifier, is we got the Lovers and we got the Seven of Wands. And the Seven of Wands is that putting up a defense. It's the fighting, kind of, it's resistance. And what I'm kind of getting here is that I'm getting that maybe you're kind of, again, you've got some, I'm seeing that you've gotten some positive new starts in different areas of your life, but the universe is trying to give you the Lovers. It's trying to give you the Lovers, but you're kind of resisting it. And I think it's because you're holding on to something from your past. And it's definitely heart-related, right? It's heart-related. You can see here, this is actually a scene from, I think it's not Northanger Abbey, it's, I'm not thinking of it, but I know the story. But here it is, it's some sad news. It's Fanny Price from, yep, I can't think of it. I will put it on the screen. But she's showing kind of a letter to her cousin, and she's upset about it. But what it is that that's what I'm kind of feeling like. It's almost like I'm getting a vibe that maybe you're looking over old text messages, and it's just kind of rechurning these nostalgic feelings for someone from your past. And you're kind of just you're ignoring anything new coming in. You're just kind of doing your own thing and it's almost like you're pretending like it doesn't exist. Like you're pretending like this new opportunity for happiness, or you're just kind of filling up your time and not really going after. I kind of get that vibe, like maybe you've done a lot of online dating and then you get kind of burnt out with it, and you know how you get into that phase where you're just like, okay, I'm just going to do me for a while. I'm just going to not date. I'm going to just, enjoy my time. But here, with this being underneath the Six of Teacups, I really get the feeling it's because you've got some kind of lingering emotions for a different relationship, and then you're resisting something that would be like the Lovers, like would be really, really good for you. But what it's telling me is that, again, remember the Tower, if you're going down a path, I think this is a little bit of a caution, is that, well, the other thing is the Six of Teacups is a reunion card too, so it might very well mean that someone because the other thing about this Tower, and again, to take in consideration the story, this is from persuasion, right? So, and what it was is Frederick Wentworth was showing attention to someone new, and then something happened and he ended up rekindling with the person from his past, and the Six of Teacups is the person from the past. So maybe, I am just, you would know your story better than anyone. But I'm definitely feeling like it's either you holding on to something from the past that's preventing a new love, or you went down a path with someone new and there's going to be kind of a hard reset that's going to put you back in the direction of the person from the past, because that's really the connection you're meant to have. So, but there is definitely an element of resistance there. And the one caution is, remember, you just have your Tower, have your foundation straight. Whomever it is that you really want that foundation with, the story is going to turn out the way that it's supposed to, right? And if the Tower has to come in and kind of blow things around in order to do a reset, that's what it's going to do. But yeah, guys, I hope that makes sense. But that's some interesting energy. But definitely, you have so many start cards. You have so many start cards, and it's in every other area except Cups. So, definitely, one thing that I'll say in that effect, though. But if you go with your true desires, go truly with what you need, right? If this was a relationship that felt, karmic or didn't treat you right, try to get to a soul place where you go for something that is really good for you. And I know that's trite as hell to say. Everybody always says that, well, let's just do what's right for you. And, you know, I know that's very difficult, but that's also where the Tower, because remember, it's testing that foundation. So you want that foundation to be strong where the storm will come and pass and you'll still be standing, right? So the last deck is the Slow Tarot by Lacey Bryant. And let's go ahead, and how does, and we got a Bloodstone, which is a very healing one. It helps purge negative emotions. But how does the Tower manifest in your life? Deck 3. How does the Tower manifest in Deck 3's life? Thank you. Okay, that's a lot of cards, but we're going to go ahead and just take this together. See if we can only get... Okay, how does the Tower manifest presently? Deck 3's life. Okay, we do, just for the notation, we have the Sun on the bottom of the deck. All right, guys, so let's go ahead and let's see. Deck number 3. How is the Tower manifesting in your life? All right, now, in the past, we definitely have, yeah, I'm kind of getting a relationship vibe with all of it, but you had what felt like a really wonderful brand new start with somebody. You have the Fool and the Six of Wands, and it was very, I've said in previous videos, you know, I've talked about it, you see the light is almost similar, right? The Fool is that brand new beginning. It's like jumping off the cliff and knowing the universe is going to catch you. And then Six of Wands is that jubilation. It's being the victor, right? It's being up on the shoulders and just feeling like, you know, king of the world, right? Now, what it is that I've said in previous videos, I've had conversations with my friends, you know, my high school friends. We had this really deep conversation one night that we talked about the difference of falling in love for the first time versus falling in love when you're older. And we kind of coined the phrase, the Zoom. And what it is the Zoom is when that first time you fall in love and you've never experienced the hitting the ground before, right? You never experienced, you know, this is the first time you're falling in love, so you're enjoying that. It feels just like that, right? And you see he's kind of young here too. I kind of like that. And this person's young too. You can see they're playing across. And what it is it's that Zoom, right? And what happens is once you've been through a few relationships and you've fallen and hit rock bottom, you know, and then picked yourself up, then you kind of know that there's, you know, that the ground is not soft, and you don't quite let yourself zoom as hard with the other relationships, right? It seems like that first love is the one that you just kind of free fall, right? You do that almost like skydiving, right? But because you haven't hit the ground yet. Now, here I'm seeing that in the past you had some kind of relationship that gave you that zoom, right? And it gave you that zoom in a deep way. And what happened was, you know, it happened fast, it was impulsive, it could have been very lustful. It could have been very lustful because it gave you a great high. It gave you a high. But then what happened was you later had to walk away. And when you kind of look at it, it's like, okay, those teacups just, you know, they're not fulfilling you, and you had to walk away. And now what's crowning this is that you've got the King you've got the Knight of Cups. And what always strikes me about this this card is that you look how mythical it looks, right? This horse looks like it is some kind of sea creature, right? It doesn't even look like it has back legs. It looks like it's like some kind of sea serpent. And you can see the King of Cups is holding up a cup, but he's not facing forward. It's almost like, you know, and then the daffodil, I have to brush up on my daffodil definition, but it just kind of feels like, you know, it was, you know, the Knight of Cups is a very dreamy character. It's almost too good to be true. And what it is this is kind of feeling like a little bit of a love bombed situation. Maybe someone who is just very good about making people feel good. And you can be a man or a woman watching this. Maybe you got into, you know, kind of a you know, some kind of relationship with someone who's real good at making you feel like you're top of the world, and then the next minute making you feel like this. And that is the definition of a love bomb, is, you know, someone who comes on really strong, really gets you into it, and then once they get what they want, you know, they kind of leave you. And, you know, I really do not like those relationships. I think that's a sign of just really irresponsibility on the part of the person who's doing it. But the other thing is that, you know, the Knight of Cups in tarot is kind of notorious as being the Lothario. He is, and you can see again, he looks too good to be true. You almost don't even see his face, and the fact that he's turned away and it looks like he's handing the cup to something else or someone else, and it just looks like a daydream, right? It looks like a daydream. And I think this really was some type of relationship that was not built on a strong foundation. It was kind of a house of cards. It was enjoyable, you know, but it was fast, and it was very emotionally laden, because the other thing is you're going from on top of the world to this in one card, right? You know, it's like how, you know, I'm feeling my head spin with this, right? That's pretty damn fast. That's almost like, you know, like there was no foundation to begin with. It came in quickly, left just as quickly. But there is this dreaminess about it. It's almost as if there's still some kind of fantasy about how it was. Now, directly underneath the Tower, you have the Page of Swords, and you have the Six of Coins. Now, I definitely love the Page of Swords. I do feel like she's such a cute character, and what it is the Page is a novice. It's very simple communication. Most of the time it's text messages. The Page is also, it's a little bit of immature communication. It's kind of, not in a bad way, but it's kind of like, it's that light communication. It's kind of like that, you know, I'm sorry, guys. I hate to give these type of reads, but it's feeling situational. It feels situationship is what I'm feeling. Because what it is you got all of this, you know, top of the world, and then following it, it's almost like, you know, hey, what are you up to today? You know, it's very simple communication. And what it tells me is that this is probably someone that you're still in communication with, but it has not transitioned to any type of in-person or anything close to what it was in the past. You're keeping it on a base level. Either that, or that person, this knight, is still following you, like keeping up on tabs on you on social media, or maybe you're just kind of friends through social media and kind of a very light, you know, expected, completely no strings attached kind of way. You know, you could not chat each other, you know, you could chat each other 1 minute and then the next day not, you know, have it be completely turned off. Now, the other reason that I kind of say that is you've got the Six of Coins. Now, the Six of Coins is, you know, it's funny. This card always is such a strong one for me. And the traditional meaning of the card is equal treatment, right? And in the Rider-Waite-Smith, I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to pull out the Rider-Waite just for a minute. In the traditional Rider-Waite-Smith, it is a man who is well-dressed, giving money to the poor, and he's holding up a scale. And it's supposed to be those who, you know, have more are giving back to those who have less, so you will be equal. But it always looks to me like a pity card. And I don't know if I'm reading it wrong. It does, it just screams to me breadcrumb, right? And because it does, when you look at it, you see someone, and it looks like breadcrumbs, right? He's giving, and the other thing is that there are 3 people in this thing, and you see one person getting the coins and the other person's waiting to get the coins, and it's like, okay, which one are you? And in this deck, and again, we're taking into consideration the deck in question, it's kind of the same thing. What's beautiful about this deck is she actually paired this. The 5 of coins is the other side of this image, which is a really beautiful way to see it. But you have this woman, and she's got kind of a heart on her doorstep, but she's got the same scales, and she's got a happy expression, but she's throwing coins towards somebody. Now, what it could be is it could very well be that maybe you had a falling out with someone, and you are just now coming back into communication, but it either feels like the reason that you're talking is because it almost feels like, again, the scales of justice, as if it's some kind of obligation, you know, oh, okay, I kind of screwed you over, so the least I can do is talk to you here and there. Either that, or, you know, it could legitimately just be the starting of communication again after the walking away. Sometimes someone needs to walk away in order to think. So this isn't to villainize anyone. It's not saying that, you know, this person was trying to be manipulative, but the moment that someone walks away from something that they've put emotional investment in, you know, it's like, you do have to really kind of weigh that. It's like, okay, the other thing is it's telling me that when you've got one woman who's really kind of giving, and then you've got a page of swords, it really feels, you know what, the way I kind of read that is, let me put in the bare minimum. Let me put in the bare minimum. And the other thing that I'll just caution with is, because this is the deck of cards, right? This is, of the 3 cards, this one really doesn't depict any type of strong structure. This one is the one that's just blowing away in the wind. This is going to collapse really, really quickly. But the only thing that I can say about, especially with the page, is that we as a society, we are in a horrible, I'm sorry, I don't mean to make this sound all gloom and doom, but we are in a stage where our digital advances have made us, you know, we have such access to information. We can learn anything that you want, and that's wonderful. Goodness knows I love YouTube. I love the access to, I can learn to do anything. But the problem is that we have completely cut out any interpersonal connection with that. And text messages, it's proven, text messages do not connect you that way. Yes, they keep you in touch with people, but the context of what you read on a screen is not the same as talking to somebody face to face. You still have to schedule time with people. And it is proven, though, that you don't necessarily have to be in the same room, but you at least have to see their face on a screen. Like, you have to FaceTime someone. So if anybody is just continuing, if someone's not even offering to give you a phone call, then it is a little bit of that pity. And I don't mean to say it this way, but if you feel like anybody is pity texting you, right, you don't have to put up with that. And in that sense, just if you feel like that's what's going on after all of this in the past, go ahead and let that tower fall. Because the other thing about the tower is that it could be the universe telling you, go ahead and let it fall. Let it fall. Don't feed into something. The other thing about the Six of Pentacles that I'm starting to try to understand and read when I see the card is you've got to hold out for fair treatment. That is a scale, right? So if you feel like if you feel like you're the beggar in this situation and you feel like you're still just getting pennies when you should be getting at least, and it's a lot of, there's some really great videos here on YouTube that talk about stuff like that too. If you feel like someone is not, the other thing is progression, right? If you're trying to mend things with somebody, that is completely okay. But if things are not progressing, if you just keep going round and round and round in limbo of text messages, if you're not actually seeing that person face to face, if they're not offering you at least a 5-minute phone call or, hey, let's get together with coffee, you got to ask yourself, do I really want those kind of relationships in my life? Is that equal, right? Is that equal? I don't need to be, lower than you on your front porch, begging for your time. And, so it's one thing to, and again, I am going to, in the defense, is that it's really hard nowadays to do that. It is. It's hard. I don't even feel like talking to my mom on the phone sometimes. And it's not because I don't miss her and that I don't want to, hear her voice. It's just I'm exhausted and I don't have time. And, and the type of job that I do, I talk all day long and sometimes I'm just communicated out. But if it's any other reason other than that, if it's any other reason, and, I am definitely just getting that I'm getting a little bit of a limbo vibe from this, and I'm sorry, guys, but that might be the tower that it's talking about. We're asking the question, how is the tower manifesting in your life? And the tower is manifesting as a house of cards, and directly under it is the 6 of coins and the Page of Swords. But I would say that also, if the tower is testing that foundation, because that's the other thing that it does, it tests the foundation, maybe this is something fledgling, right? And let's go ahead and look at the future and see, okay, is that foundation strong enough? And what I'm seeing here is that we're getting the 6 of Swords, and we got the 3 of Wands. So I do think that there is a bright future for you, but I do think that you have to kind of navigate it to better shores. Now, to be quite honest, guys, this is 50-50. The 6 of Swords, it's kind of hard to tell in the card, but there is a man and a woman in the boat, and there's a child too, but there's a man and a woman in the boat. And the one thing is that in the Lenormand there is a definition of a lighthouse, which means caution, but it means just navigate, navigate carefully. Navigate the situation carefully. Don't do anything drastic. But there is a 3 of Wands in the future. So what it's telling me is and these are people waiting for, it's that stereotypical waiting for your ships to come in, but it is saying that there's a future that can come out of this that is positive. But the only caution is that it did come out like this, and the 3 of Wands is underneath the 6 of Swords. So what that's kind of telling me is that it is telling me don't wait too long. It's, don't be waiting indefinitely for this happy future. If you need to do the moving on, if you feel like, again, if you're putting in the effort and you're not getting equal in return, or you feel like this is not progressing, it is completely okay for you to say, okay, I did my part to make, I handled my karma, right? I tried to salvage this relationship. I tried to do my best. I probably got taken advantage of a little bit in it, but I can move on with a clear conscience. I can let that tower fall. Now, one of the cards that kind of popped out too, and I don't want you to be afraid, this is a little bit more of a gory 10 of Swords, but you did get the 10 of Swords. Now, the only other thing, the people get really scared with the 10 of Swords because it feels like an echo of death. It feels like an echo of, okay, this is over, done, put a fork in it. But the other thing about the 10 of Swords is that the beautiful thing about the 10 of Swords is it means that there's no other pain that can come from this source. You have, the only other way to go is up, is what another meaning. So the fact that, and remember how we said, the tower comes in and strikes. If you do need to let this tower fall, you can move on. Again, you can move on with a clear conscience. You don't have to feel tied. You did everything that you could have to make this, I guess the best way to say it, and I'm going to curse a little bit here, so I'm sorry, please don't be offended, but it might very well be their shit, not yours. Because if you were in a situation where you did everything that you could have to try to make this a good relationship and it still crumbled, you know, go ahead and navigate it carefully, because it could just be that the other person that you're dealing with, you know, might just not be in a good place. And if that's the case, just try to handle them carefully, but also do what's right for yourself. But the other thing about the Ten of Swords is that it can also mean that you just feel like a victim. It's a victim mentality. Because, and I'm not saying that that's what's happening to you. I think what it's saying is that please don't fall into that mindset. A lot of times when things don't work out, you start believing that you did something wrong, or that you didn't try hard enough, or you didn't, you know, maybe if I had just done this differently. Throw that out. Throw that out. You did everything that you could have. You did everything that you could have. The tower was going to fall anyway. The only thing that you can do is get to a safe distance and let it come down. And then the other thing is, and remember how we said, the other beautiful thing about the tower is that once the storm is past, evaluate the damage. Evaluate the damage. And then you can see if you're going to, after you evaluate the damage, you'll see who's in the boat, right? You'll see who's in the boat with you. But I can promise you that it is going to be, you know, I do kind of seeing like this is your hope. You've been waiting to move to a better place. And you don't care if it's a slow transition. You just don't want it to be this limbo crap. And don't let it be this limbo crap. You don't deserve that. But just know that, again, you know, don't let yourself be a victim. If you need to get to a self-distance, if you need to do what you need to do as this tower crumbles, you do that. Don't worry about the other person unless you have to. But just know that, you know, again, you know, if you're in some kind of limbo and there's no progression and you don't feel like you're being given equal treatment, that could be the tower crumbling. And the moving forward can be one of two things. It can either be this person actually coming around and getting in the boat with you and navigating towards better shores, or it can be you in that boat on your own, or just moving on your own. But it is, with the lighthouse, it does say navigate this carefully. Neither of you want to do a baby in the bathwater thing. Don't throw the baby out with the bathwater. If this is a relationship that you are trying to salvage, just handle it carefully, but, you know, have your boundaries in place, because it is tested. This is not, the way it was in the past was not a steady foundation, and after the tower comes down, you can decide whether or not you can rebuild. If you can't rebuild, then that's okay. Just don't feel like a victim. Just look at your foundation and say, okay, where can I go from here? Where can I go that's gonna build a stronger tower for me? But wow, guys, I knew that. Well, I hope you enjoyed. That was really strong, and please, yeah, I know whenever it's strong messages like that, you know, please don't, you know, keep, you know, take heart. It's going to be okay. I do. I don't, you know, that's one thing. I do like the tower. I don't think it's all gloom and doom. It's scary, but, well, I thank you so much for joining me. I will be posting again tomorrow for the 31 days of tarot. I have a question every single day throughout the month of January, so we're keeping up with it. We're keeping strong. So I hope you can join me for that. Otherwise, I am doing my weekly energy card reading on Saturday, and I hope you can join me next week for the next How to Tarot, because we're going to do a really wonderful card. We're gonna How to Tarot on the Star. So I hope you can join me, and I'll see you then. Bye.